All right, everybody, welcome to another Dave's Real Life story. And this one took me a little while to kind of even actually want to talk about. But I was kicked out of the house at 15 years old, all right? But it was looking back on it, it was totally my fault. I mean, I was a stupid, kid, 10 foot tall, bulletproof, couldn't do anything wrong. But I did, now that I look back, I'm like, man, how stupid was I? But growing up as a kid, I mean, I was lucky. I had the best childhood. I had my mom, my dad, they never fought, they didn't drink. We had anything that we ever wanted, my brother and I. We never went without food, never went without electricity or roof over our head. We didn't have to stay the night in some bar parking lot. I've heard all these stories from my friends and others, and I really consider myself as having an amazing childhood. I was stupid. So, how I got kicked out of the house was as you know, I enjoy Dungeons and Dragons. And for purposes of this video, my friends, Daryl, and Daryl, we're just going to call everybody Daryl. We would skip school pretty much every day. And we would go to homeroom in the mornings, which was about 15-20 minutes. And then we would meet out in the parking lot and haul butt. We'd go to Orlando. And there was an amazing game store. It was called Enterprise 1701. And it was right across the street from the Orlando Naval Base, which those guys played D&D. And every day that we went to Enterprise, there were a ton of sailors in there playing, no matter if it was D&D. I mean, that's how I found out about, Warhammer, Talislanta, all these other games, Star Frontiers. And so, yeah, pretty much skipped school. It was my sophomore year in high school. And, I was 15 years old. Here it is, 1988. Shows my age. And we were skipping school. Back then, the schools didn't care. The schools it was just like a Henry Ford assembly line. They were just pushing kids out. They didn't give a crap. But I guess the state stepped in and all this other stuff, and attendance was now starting to be accounted for. And my sophomore year, I just said to hell with it. I don't care. I was planning on going into the Navy or, getting a scholarship with football and I wanted to play for University of Miami, go Canes. And, I just didn't care. I didn't show up for school anymore. It was, oh my gosh. We had I remember that we had in a semester, we had 2 semesters a year, and then we had 3 6-week periods in a semester. Or it may have been 8 weeks. But anyways, I skipped like 2 full semesters. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to go back. And when I went back, I was withdrawn. And then because I'd been taking like letters out of the mailbox from the high school that I went to, but I never opened it up. I never opened any of them up and read them or anything like that. But come to find out, I was taken out of school. So here I'm like, oh crap, I think I'm in trouble here, And I hid it for a couple months. I would always leave the house before my parents would go to work. And then I would always sneak back in through my window. And then my friends would come over, we'd play D&D, etc. So, but I really did I had a great childhood. We were skipping school, running away from truancy officers at the mall. We used to have this game room called the Barrel of Fun, where you would actually, it was like the top of a barrel, circular, and you would walk into the middle, and it was called the Barrel of Fun. And that was at old Miracle City Mall in Titusville. And we would run from truancy officers, and it was like they had an Orange Julius, which was awesome. And so Another thing that really, what really pissed my dad off was I had an account for college, and I would take money out of that, and I was like, I'll put it in later. I didn't have a job, you know what I mean? I was, and then I was taking those bank statements and hiding them as well. So, I was such a stupid kid, and so yeah, running from truancy officers, it was like a big game. You know what I mean? It was a big game. Plus playing D&D every day, it was fun. So anyway, the charade was over. You know, uh, actually somebody from the school came out to the house and talked to my mom and dad. My mom and dad thought I was in school, which I wasn't. I was over in Orlando, and yeah, it was. I got the gig was up. You know what I mean? I was in so much trouble. I mean, I was always intimidated of my father anyway. I mean, he was an old, you know, he was in the Korean War, Vietnam War. He's a baby boomer, you know what I mean? He didn't take no crap. And, you know, he was a long career Navy, you know, and he just didn't take crap. And when I got home, my mom and dad were home, and I'm thinking, what the heck are both my mom and dad home for? Well, my mom was home when the school came over to the house, and then my mom called my dad at work because my dad worked out of NASA, and my dad came home, and my dad usually didn't get home till like 6 o'clock. So I knew something was going on. And as soon as I walked in the door, my dad said, "We need to have a talk, son." And I knew exactly what it was about. I didn't play stupid or anything like that. And we sat down, and he just told me that he was disappointed in me, and they had big plans for me because, I mean, my brother, he was a knucklehead. You know, it's like, you know, my mom and dad told me later in life, they knew that he wasn't going to do anything. And, you know, they had big plans for me and to go to college and, you know, be the first person in my family to go to college, etc. And my dad he was disappointed, but he was pissed off too. And he told me that I had to get out of the house. And, you know, I don't think that would have happened now, not in the year 2021. You know, my dad probably would have been thrown in jail, Homeland Security, the FBI, everybody would have been called, news outlets, everything. And I'm going to just literally pack me up in the truck. I had like 15 minutes to get my stuff. I thought this was all a joke at first. And boy, did I find out that it wasn't. And I had like a backpack and two garbage bags of dirty clothes. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about life, you know what I mean? And here it is, you know, my dad's packing me up in the truck, and he goes, "Well, I'm going to take you over to your friend Daryl's house." And he did. And there's no cell phones, no, you know, no, there was like email, but it was like $300 to do an email, you know, with I forget that internet service where it was pay by the minute or something. But yeah, but he says, "You're not taking your computer," because I had a Tandy 1000. I also had what else did I have? I had a Texas Instruments. I was spoiled. I was a spoiled kid, and I had anything that I wanted. And you know, my parents had good jobs, and like I said, I was so lucky. So on the way there, we pulled into the Space Center Credit Union parking lot. So I'm thinking, oh my God. But he already knew that I had been taking money out. And he told me that, he goes, "I'm going to give you some money." And he went inside. He goes, "Don't you dare leave this truck." He said, "If you leave this truck, I'll find you and run you over." And I didn't move. And he came out after a couple minutes, and he got in the truck, and then he handed me an envelope. I still have this envelope. It was a manila or vanilla colored envelope, and it had money in it. And he goes, "Here's $1,000, son." He goes, "Welcome to life." And when he said "welcome to life," and I knew that this was for real by this point. I was like, I was upset. I was crying and everything else. And he said, don't you even think about crying. He goes, you did this to yourself. He goes, you're nothing but a disappointment. He goes, I don't want anything to do with you ever again. He goes, don't ever come home. Don't ever call. He said, don't call your grandma, because I was super close to my grandmother. He says, don't call your grandmother, nothing. He goes, you are not a part of this family anymore. And 15 years old, what was I supposed to think? I didn't know. I mean, I was just deer in headlights by this point. So my dad drops me off at my friend Daryl's house for purposes of this video. And he's like, dude, you can't stay here. I'm like, I know. What am I going to do? But he snuck me into the house to where I stayed that night. And I mean, I didn't say a word. I mean, I was so scared. I was on the side of his bed, between his bed and the wall. And that's where I stayed, because I couldn't let him get in trouble. If his mom, or especially his stepdad was worse than my dad. And yeah, so I basically slept. And I remember in the morning, his mother coming into the room to wake him up. And so surprised she did not see me. I piled all the sheets and stuff on top of me so she wouldn't see me. But she's like, all right, honey, get up. It's time to start your day and all this stuff. And I'm going, holy cow, man. Now I'm going to get my friend in trouble, and then we're going to be homeless together. And so yeah, it was the next day. And my friend James, he had just got this old BFO's, Oldsmobile, flat tires. We almost died in it once going to a convention, and because we skipped school to go to the convention on a Friday. And so he dropped me off at the mall. And, here I am at the mall with bags, a backpack, a small suitcase. I mean, I was just like, I look like a homeless person already. And so I know that one of because my mother and father, they owned a baseball card store, right? Baseball cards, football cards, etc. And there was this guy that worked at the Burger King that was out in the parking lot of the mall. And I knew that he worked there, and he was young. He was probably early middle 20s. He had just got married, just had a kid, etc. And they lived in the condominiums across the street on the river. And I was thinking, well, I'll ask him if I could pay him to stay at their house for a little while. Because I had known him, I had talked to him a lot. We had talked a lot about, he was a big sports fan, so was I, etc. And I went in there and he was working. And he was like, I talked to him. I was like upset. I'm like crying. I'm like just out of control, right? I'm like a hot mess, man. So he got on the phone, called his wife, and he told me what apartment he lived in across the street. So I went over there and I met his wife and everything else, and they had a kid. And so I had actually been accepted to live there, and they were going to clean out their kids' room, put everything in their baby's room into their room. That way I could have my own room. And I was going to pay him it was like $200 a month. I mean, to me, that was a lot of money, but looking back at it, I'm thinking, wow, that was a steal, And, the plan was I was going to start working at Burger King and stuff, and that's how I would be able to pay my bills and stuff. But I told him, I said, hey, I've got some money. I can pay a couple months ahead of time. Everything will be cool. Plus, they could use the money because, he didn't make a lot. She didn't work. And they had a kid, and she was pregnant with a second kid already. It was like, as soon as she had her kid, she was already pregnant. And she was like showing big time. So she must have got immediately pregnant right after they had the baby. Because, I mean, their kid was like 6 months old, and she's like almost ready to have another one. And I'm going, wow. I I was like, something doesn't add up here. But so the first night I stayed there and everything was cool. It's $200 a month. It was like $250 a month. And, that included, eating there and everything. And I was like, wow, this is going to be cool for a little while. And so the next day I was sleeping, and then I woke up and I heard crying. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on? So, I go out, open my door, and she's on the couch crying. And there's like two sheriff's officers in the apartment. And I'm going, what the hell's going on? I'm thinking, what's going on? And then, I go out to get something to drink, and come to find out, her baby's being taken away from her because the father, which I thought the father was Mike, which was the guy that worked at Burger King, but come to find out they were from California and they moved to Florida to get away from her ex. And that was her ex's baby. So now I'm thinking, okay, so, Mother Nature wasn't betraying me here. So her kid was being taken from her right then and there. And she's just frantic, screaming on the phone. Mike's having to come home. And I'm going, this is just an absolute train wreck. So the kid they literally took the kid right there on the spot. And so he gets home, and come to find out, even though it was her kid, she had custody. She couldn't leave the state of California with like consent or something like that. And she left anyway. So that's why the kid was taken, and the kid was going to be taken back to California to the father, because the father didn't think that she was going to leave, and she left. So now, they break the news to me. I went out and I was like just walking around and stuff because I didn't have anything else to do. And when I came home, they both sat me down and said, we're so sorry to do this to you, but we got to move back to California. We got to get her kid back, etc. And they explained the situation to me, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So, they gave me back the money that I had given them the night before to stay there. So I gave them like $400 or something like that for a couple months, and they gave me that money back. So now here it is. They said, you can stay here until we leave, which is going to be on like a Friday or something. So I had like almost a full week. And, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I was contemplating, what am I going to do? I mean, do I want to go to, I was going to go get on a Greyhound bus and go somewhere. That's what I thought. I was like, well, I'm going to get out of this horse-esque town of Titusville that I was living in. And I decided that I was going to get on a Greyhound bus. And I didn't know where I was going to go. I'm like, do I want to go to California? I was like, well, there's nothing holding me back. So I was going to go to California, or do I want to go to Ohio where my family was? Or do I want to go to Kentucky where I had other family? But then I had snuck to spring break because I was the vigilante, at my age. And my friend Chris and we snuck and went to Daytona Beach for spring break, back when Daytona Beach used to have spring break. I think it's up in the Panhandle now, Panama City, I think it is. But back then, spring break was amazing. It was a horrifying but yet exhilarating experience. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to Daytona Beach. So I walked to the Greyhound station with all my stuff. And by this time, everything was like, most everything was clean and stuff. And I bought a ticket for one-way ticket to Daytona Beach. It was like 20 something bucks. I remember that part. And I got on, it literally took, and this is probably late morning, early afternoon. I thought it was just going to be a straight shot on Greyhound. Oh my goodness. They stopped at every street. It seemed like it took it took like 30, 45 minutes normally to get to Daytona Beach, but it took like 5 hours to get to Daytona Beach because they literally stopped at every little single town, every little bench, so by the time I get to Daytona Beach, the sun's going down and I'm going, okay. So I tried to get a hotel room on Daytona Beach at this like crappy rundown place. I think it was called like Tropicana Fever or something like that. I don't know, but it was like $25 for a night. And I tried to get in there and I didn't have an ID. So I didn't even know what an ID was, to be honest. I thought they were wanting my license, and I said, I don't have a license. So they wouldn't let me rent a room. And I'm like, look, I got the money. And they said, no, we can't rent it to you. I'm like, or whatever. So I slept under the Daytona Beach Pier. Here it is. It's nighttime. It's right on the beach. It's starting to get cold. And I slept under Daytona Beach Pier because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I didn't know anyone, nothing. And here it is. It's getting cold. This is probably beginning of the year-ish. And, it's like warm during the day and then it's freezing at night, and then being coupled with being right on the ocean. Yeah, it was crazy. So I was sleeping under the bridge, and I had like 3 layers of clothes on. I had these jackets on as blankets, and I was still freezing. And there were all these little bugs. I remember these little bugs, these little sand fleas or whatever they were. They were just crawling all over me, but I couldn't do anything about it because I was stuck there. And so a little while, I'm thinking, what is that? So I see this silhouette that kept moving under the pier, and I'm going, what the hell is that? I thought it was like waves at first, but as I'm looking, I'm like, that's 2 people. So there were 2 people getting it on under the pier, under the Daytona Beach Pier. So that was like the first time that I had ever seen anything like that. 2 people just like getting it on. And then all of a sudden I started hearing yelling, and I'm going, whoa, I'm just taking it as it comes now because I think I've seen it all already. Right. And then I remember looking to my right because I was on the left-hand side under the pier because it had the most poles and stuff. And I was able to kind of like hide myself there. And so to the right, I heard this guy yelling, and he was saying, "Effer, I did." He kept yelling at, and this guy was like drunk. He was staggering around. He had on this, remember back in the 80s when those beer helmets were a thing, where you'd wear this like baseball helmet, and then it would have 2 little holders where it would hold beer cans or Coke cans or whatever. And then it had 2 straws going, and he had one of those on, and he's yelling, "Effer, I did." And that's all he's yelling. I mean, he's just, so I could tell he was drunk, and he was sagging around, holding on to the poles. And these people heard him and saw him. So they like pulled up their pants and hauled butt on the other side, and they just ran down the beach, And this guy, he had a fishing pole, and he was just standing there fishing. I don't even think he had anything on his hook, to be honest. He just threw it out, and he was so drunk, he would just start like nodding off, and he fell over. He fell down a couple times because he was just so drunk. So that's how my night went, because I was just so enamored with this guy. I'm like, never seen anything like this before. So I did eventually, I got a little bit of sleep, and the next day came, and it was like it was the best sunrise that I'd ever seen, just because I could feel, I was so cold, and it was warm. It was hitting my face. The sun was right there coming up over the horizon. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. And so I packed up all my stuff, shook all the bugs out. I mean, they were just crawling all over me. Oh my gosh. I don't ever want to have to deal with that again. And there was right up the ramp there was a McDonald's, and this is back before McDonald's is open 24 hours. And so I went into McDonald's, sat down with all my bags and stuff like that. And they had a little newspaper box in there, and it said Thrifty Nickel. And that's, that's all over where I was from in Titusville. And then I saw Thrifty Nickel. I'm like, oh, cool. There's stuff in here. I'll look for places to stay in this Thrifty Nickel. Because by this point, I was thinking, well, if I'm not going to be able to get a room because I don't have an ID, am I going to be able to get an apartment? And I always looked older than my age, which was good. And I was just looking, and like, I got my food. I went outside, and I was on the corner of A1A and another road. And I was sitting down on the bench, and I was reading, and it said 1-bedroom efficiency. I was $50 a week, and it said call such and such and such, Wild Olive Avenue. It said Wild Olive Avenue off of Main Street. And I just happened to look up, and it said Main Street. I'm not joking. Totally MacGyver. I mean, totally MacGyver. And I look up and it said Main Street. I'm like, well, it's not that way because the beach is right there. So I said, wow, how lucky is this? So I I think I got a sausage McMuffin and a hash brown, and I wolfed it down, and I'm like, I'm going to go try to get this place. And I put all my stuff up, and I started going down the road. Very first street that I came to, it was Wild Olive Avenue. I was like, this can't get any luckier for me. And I found the address. It was this old, probably early 1900s house, 2-story, rusted metal roof. I mean, it was just horrible. And I knocked on the door. This older lady, probably in her late 50s, early 60s. She answered the door. I had the paper. I said, I'm here to look at your apartment that you got for rent. And she said, how old are you, honey? I said, I'm 18. I said, I'm just getting out and I'm looking for a place. And she said, there's no way you're 18 with a baby face like that or something like that. And I said, yeah, I'm 18. And she said, well, what kind of information do you have? Do you have a birth certificate on you? Do you have a license? And I'm thinking, this is not going to go good. And I just started crying. I was just so emotionally wrecked by this period. I told her, look, my dad kicked me out. I skipped school. She was wanting to call the cops, and I begged her not to. I said, please don't. My dad told me I can't come home. He gave me this money and he told me welcome to life and everything. And I guess she felt bad for me. And she gave me the efficiency, and it was the whole top of her house, right? And I had to go up a flight of old rickety wooden stairs that I thought I was going to fall through every time I was walking up or walking down it. I thought this place was a crap hole. I mean, this is an S-hole. And I mean, everywhere I walked, I had to be careful because I thought I was going to fall through the floor. But I had all the, I had a shower. I had it was one big room. And then there was one little bedroom in the back. And that's where I stayed for 3 years. And I said, look, I can pay for a long time up front. And I did. I think I gave her like $600. I think I paid her like 4 months or 5 months or something like that. And then I'm like, well, I need to go buy a bike. So I went and I went to, I got on, because they had a huge bus system. They had trolleys and everything on Daytona Beach. And I went to McCrory's back when McCrory's was open, and C.G. Murphy. Well, actually, this was a C.G. Murphy that I went to, and I bought a bike. And so I could get around. And then I knew I was going to have to work. I didn't have an ID. Spring break was still kind of going on. Bike week was going on. And I was able to find this dude, literally, just like in the movies, selling fake IDs. And I got a Florida fake ID. And, it was me. He's like, well, go into Walgreens across the street and have them take a picture of you and then come back and then I'll make your ID. So that's what I did. I went and got a picture made, came out, and, had a fake ID made. And that's how I got my job. I literally gave, when I got a job, I was working 2 jobs. So I was working at Publix, which is a grocery store, and then I was also working at Winn-Dixie. And I worked in this place called Bel Air Plaza. And I actually looked it up, and it's still there in Daytona Beach on A1A. But it's like a horseshoe, like a huge outdoor mall. And then in the corner, there was like some indoor stuff, like a couple doctor's offices, and then a bowling alley, which I lived at the bowling alley once I, was. Anyways, I'll get to that. So before I get too far ahead of myself. So I had this fake ID, and then I got a job. And I gave them my fake ID, and I'm like, holy crap, I could get in trouble. But they never said anything to me about it. So I got a job bagging groceries at Winn-Dixie. And, my ID said that I was 18 years old. So I was working pretty much 4 or 5 days a week bagging groceries, and it just wasn't enough money. I mean, it was enough money to get by, but I wanted more because I wanted to save up my money. And so across, like I said, Bel Air Plaza was like this horseshoe open air mall. And Winn-Dixie was on the north end, and Publix is on the south end. So I applied for Publix, and I got a job working overnights as a stock person. So I would work overnight, and then I would sleep on one of the benches for like 2 hours because I lived like probably 4 or 5 miles away, and I didn't want to ride my bike home and then have to ride it all the way back to work. And so I just slept on the bench after I was getting done working. And then I had it to where I think I had Tuesday and Wednesday off, and then I worked every single day. So I would leave at like 6 o'clock at night to go to work. And then I would like go and get food and stuff like that. I ate at Denny's a lot, or IHOP. Denny's, IHOP, there's a Village Inn. So I would like eat at those places all the time. And I think I'd go, and then I'd come home, relax for a couple hours, and then I had to work at 10 at Publix. And then I work overnight. I got off at like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I slept on the bench because I started at 8 o'clock, and then I would work till like 2 or 3 o'clock, and then I was done. So I would go home, sleep for like 3-4 hours, and it would go start all over again, just like everyone else in life, right? So here I am, 15 years old, and just working every single day. I'm like riding my bike, and I'm watching all these kids playing on the beach. I'm watching them playing in the parks, playing basketball. I loved playing basketball. I couldn't play basketball. They were playing flag football. I couldn't do anything like that because I was like working. So I didn't, I had a great childhood up to 15, and then 15 to 18, I was like thrusted into life. But it was, looking back, it was totally my fault. It wasn't my parents' fault. I think my dad could have handled it differently than kicking me out. I mean, like I mentioned before, he probably could have been arrested for doing that, especially nowadays. And I was working 2 jobs, sleeping on benches between shifts and stuff. Lived in a crap hole. I couldn't have a bank, and I had all this money because I was working 2 jobs, and I didn't pay a lot in bills and stuff. So where was I didn't know where to put my money. So after like a month, I couldn't fit any more money in my wallet or in my pockets, and I'm carrying all this money around on me. So there was a 5-gallon bucket under my sink, and I just filled up this. Over 3 years, I filled up this 5-gallon bucket with nothing but change and paper bills and everything. And I was scared to leave it there. So I put a piece of wood over it, put like soap and cleaner and stuff on top of it. And I had a ton of money just sitting in this old rickety place that, anybody could have probably just wiggled the door really hard and opened it up and went in. But I got lucky. Nobody ever, went into my place or stole it. It was a really nice place. Well, it wasn't a nice place, but it was a pretty nice area, except for bike week, because bikers would be like passed out in your yard. Bikes are just everywhere, motorcycles. And remember I mentioned that guy, Don, that guy with the beer can helmet. Well, he was my neighbor across the street, to come find out. And he was a big fisherman. His name was Don. And I was out there one morning and I saw him walk out. He was like sitting on his porch. He was like all hung over and stuff. And I said, that's the guy that was yelling at those people. So I said, hey, how's it going? And I said, were you down at the pier the other night yelling at some people? And he said, I don't know. I might have been. I don't remember. but his name was Don. He taught me a lot about life. He told me, don't trust anyone. He said, don't even trust me. And yeah, so he taught me a lot about life. And the lady that I lived at the house, her son his name was Fred, and he was older. He's probably in his mid 30s, early 40s. He had a family, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he had a nice car, and they'd always hang out at the beach and talk on their walkie-talkie. Well, not on walkie, but like ham radios and stuff. And so I didn't have any time to get in trouble. But I wouldn't anyway, because I was just so scared. I mean, I didn't even know how to do laundry, for Christ's sake. And there was this little laundromat at the end of the street that was on Main Street, and this little Chinese lady, she owned it. And I went in there and I asked her, I said, can you show me how to use one of these machines? I've never done my laundry. And she goes, where's your mama? Where's your mama? And I told her, I said, yeah, she's working and I need to clean my clothes. And she goes, no, you run away. And I'm thinking, oh my God, man, does anybody not believe anything anybody says around here? But I would go there, and then next door they also owned a little market, like a little Chinese market, and like you could get Chinese takeout and stuff too. And I had really never had Chinese food before, but I just totally fell in love with Chinese food because I would always get rice and stuff, and those little crab meat ragnoons and stuff. I lived on that stuff. And then I eventually, got a microwave. I got my stove didn't work, so I had to buy one of those little burner plates that had a couple burners on it. But I had everything I needed. I had a little refrigerator, kept everything cold. That's where my Mountain Dew addiction started. And yeah, so I was okay. It's just that, I just didn't really know anybody except for the guys that I worked with, which they thought I was 18, but I was really only 16 by this time. And they're all wanting to go to they're wanting to go to the strip bars at night, because there's a couple strip bars there on A1A. And I would say, no, I can't go because I got to work, because I told them I had another job, but I wouldn't tell them where, because I couldn't work at two grocery stores that worked that were in the same, the same outdoor shopping area. I'd get fired for that probably. So, but I eventually did go, and I still didn't have nothing but that fake ID, but that fake ID got me in. That guy did a good job on that fake ID. I wish I still had it, but I threw it away years ago because it just said falling apart. And yeah, I mean, I had learned a lot about life. I mean, I learned that's why I am the way I am now, is because I had to learn, I learned the hard way. I learned about theft. I mean, I had like 5 bikes stolen from me. I mean, bike theft was huge in Daytona Beach. Even if you had locks on your bike would still get jacked. If they wanted your bike, they were going to take it. And I actually got my bike. I had to go buy another bike, and I was walking to CG Murphy where I bought that bike, and my bike was sitting out there in the bike rack. And I'm going, that is my bike. So I called the cops. They're back when there used to be payphones. Remember payphones back in the day, people? So I called the cops. They came out, and we waited for the guy to come out to grab my bike. And he did. He put his own lock on it. And here, my bike was only stolen for a couple of hours. So yeah, this guy, come to find out, his mother worked inside of CG Murphy. And he was up there talking to his mom or something like that. And I said, "Hey, this is my bike." He says, "No, it's not, kid." I said, "Yeah, it is." I said, "I put this seat on here. This isn't the original seat." And I said, "We can lift the bike up." And I put markings under there on the sprocket housing. And the cop is like, "Let's see." And I put my initials on there, DM. And there you go. The cop's like, "I'm going to give you one chance to give this bike back to this kid, or I'm going to arrest you." And he just walked away. And I got my bike back. And that was actually the last time that my bike was stolen. But yeah, that was a cool day. But I had bikes stolen from me. I rode bikes everywhere. You know, I didn't get to enjoy my childhood. I never got to, play with the other kids like basketball or on the beach or anything like that. Although I always rode my bike on the beach, because back then you could drive a car, or, you could ride a bike on the beach and stuff like that. And that was pretty cool. And I worked 2 jobs till I was, 18 years old. And then I got lucky, and the meat department manager always saw how hard I was working. He asked me, he's like, "Hey, have you ever thought about cutting meat?" And I'm like, "No." I was like, "Is it?" I said, "Is it fun?" He says, "It can be." And he goes, "You can make a lot of money, a lot more money than doing what you're doing now." And I said, "How much money?" And he said, "Well, once you get out of the apprenticeship program, you can make $18 an hour." I said, $18 an hour? Here, I'm making like $3.50 an hour. And I'm going, 18. I said $18 an hour. He said $18 an hour. I said, "I'll start tomorrow." And he just kind of laughed. But another month went by, and then I got into the apprenticeship program. And even during the apprenticeship program, I was making $10 an hour, which was a hell of a lot of money at that time, in the late 80s, early 90s, late 80s. It was probably 1990 by this point. And I went and I put in my 2 weeks notice over at Publix, because I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to quit one of my jobs, because now I'm making more with one job than I was making with 2 jobs, and I'm making more now." So I went through this apprenticeship program. It was like 16 weeks. I graduated from it making 18. He wasn't lying. I got a raise to $18 an hour. I mean, for, someone like 17 years old by this point, this is a lot of money. And so it just kept getting better and better. And then I got promoted. But before I move on from that, Daytona Beach was a very important part of my life. I think it set me up for who I am today. And because I've always appreciated money, I've always appreciated a roof over my head, because I didn't ever want to have to sleep under a pier again. I did that one time, and that was enough for me to say, I don't ever want that. And then I'm thinking to myself, as I'm getting older, and I have a kid by this point, my son Nicholas, and I'm thinking, I would never ever, I don't care how bad he pissed me off or disappointed me, I could never do that to my kid. So that turned, I basically started hating my parents, because I was thinking, how in the hell could they do that to me at such a young age, and didn't even care to even, look for me or anything like that. And I'm like, F them, you know what I mean? And it just kind of grew into almost like a hatred for my parents. In fact, for my whole family, because I was like, well, they're all guilty by association. They don't care about me. And I think that's why I became who I am. I wasn't into girls or anything like that. I was into surviving. That's what I was into. I was into surviving. If I was going to be able to keep this roof over my head, if I was going to be able to continue to be able to put food in my gut and, to buy things that I needed every once in a while. And that's why, I save my money. Like I mentioned, I put all that money in that bucket. And the day I turned 18, I actually went down and got I got a restricted license. Back then you could get a restricted license at like 16. Well, anyways, at 18, I went down there. So because I had actually had to go to the state of Ohio where I was born, and I had to call them, and I had to order a birth certificate because I didn't have any official but it just threw me out with nothing. Just gave me money and said, get out. I don't ever want to see you again. And so I had no paperwork, nothing like that. I had a fake ID. There's no way I'm going to give the state of Ohio a fake ID because that would totally get me in trouble. So I called, got my birth certificate, and then I went down and I got my restricted license, and at 18, which was considered an ID. So I upgraded my ID at work and stuff like that. And I was hoping that, they weren't going to see the differences of the birthday and stuff like that, but they never did. I never got in trouble, and everything was good. And then the day that I turned 18, I got my license, and then I was like, well, I'm going to open up an account. So here I am. I got this huge 5-gallon bucket that is like bursting at the seams with money. I'm talking not only coins, but money. I mean, there was just, I had to dump it out to get the paper out because over, 3 years, I just kept adding to it and adding to it. So there was a bank called Barnett Bank. It was in the same plaza as where I worked at Winn-Dixie. And that's where our bank was actually. For our paychecks was Barnett Bank. And so I went into Barnett Bank, and I'm like carrying in this bucket, and she's like, can I help you? Can I help you, sir? And I took this bucket and I dropped it on the counter, and I just remember it made this huge thud sound and it shook, and she goes, where'd you get all this money? I was like, I've been saving it for 3 years and I'm 18 and I want to open up an account now. And she's like, she starts laughing. She goes, you're going to have to roll all those coins, because back then they didn't have like coin changers and stuff like that. Those machines that you dump everything in. So I spent the rest of my day at the bank rolling coins, writing my name, writing my social security number on there, because you had to roll all that stuff. And I had like $8,000 in this bucket. And here I am riding down A1A with a bucket thinking this handle's going to break, and then this money's just going to go everywhere, and then everybody's just going to be jumping on it. Because it's busy in Daytona Beach. There were a lot of people around, a lot of people walking and stuff. And I had a towel covering up the top to where you couldn't see what was in it. But I luckily made it to the bank. And yeah, I had tons of money. I had like $8,000 that I opened up an account. And she goes, where'd you get all that money, son? I said, I saved it up. So I had my first checking account, and that was fun. Fake ID, got into meat cutting, working 2 jobs, sleeping on benches. What a time, right? I mean, Daytona Beach, spring break, I got to see a lot of cool concerts during the summer. I got to see NXS back when that guy was still alive. I got to see the Soup Dragons. I got to see, the spring break concerts that they would have. So I got to see like MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice, CNC Music Factory, Salt and Peppa, Right Said Fred. I got to see all those back in the, late 80s, early 90s. So you had a good time. I mean, I learned a lot, like I said, but then I got promoted. So after all this has happened, I've lived in Daytona Beach for 3 years, and I got promoted, and I had the opportunity to go back to the same town, the same county that I moved from. So I did that. So I packed everything up and moved back home, and yeah, so that's a whole nother story, and I'll talk about that in my next real life story when I moved back home. But don't ever do that to your kids. I mean, even though I think I turned out all right, I've never been in trouble, never. I saw so much in Daytona Beach that I could have went the wrong way with drinking with Don, or, smoking pot with Don across the street, but I never did, and just always kept to myself and rode my bike everywhere. And I mean, I was in hella great shape. I mean, and saw a lot of cool concerts, did a lot of cool things, and saved a bunch of money and learned about life. I mean, when I first got there, I didn't even know how to do laundry, for Christ's sake. And yeah, it was a time in my life to where I was, wow. So I think that's going to be it for this real life story. And I'm going to talk about when I moved back to Brevard County in my next real life video. So thanks everybody for watching. It took me a long time to actually do this. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to do it, but I did it. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. If you got any comments, please leave them down below. I'll join in the discussion. And if you like the content that you see on my channel, please do me a huge favor. Give me a thumbs up. Also subscribe to my channel and hit that notification button on the right. So until next video, happy gaming, stay safe. Bye for now.